Jim Lampley back on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Jim?
I'm good, Rich. How are you?
I am doing fine. So here we are, 3 days removed. What did you think about what you called on Saturday night in Las Vegas?
Well, I think a lot less of it now. It seems, it was a cynical enterprise to begin with in certain ways, and now seems even more so. And I think, I feel terrible for anyone who spent four figures on a ticket. Feel bad for people who spent $80, $90, $100 on pay-per-view, who were not given proper information in advance on what it was they were seeing. I think, that there may be a constituency of people who think it's in some way noble and brave for Pacquiao to go ahead and enter the ring with an injury and try to perform. But I think that the only way that would wash is if the public had known in advance. To have gone ahead with the enterprise when one of the fighters turns out to have been damaged goods, and for all of the advertising and promotion to have continued to base itself on the notion that this was the fight of the century and the best combat that boxing could offer to fans and uninitiated fans who only know a little bit about boxing and see it from the surface level, buy in at the level at which they bought in and are bound to feel somewhat cheated today. I just really think it's highly unfortunate for our sport. I think it's bad for Pacquiao's image and taints his great and noble career. I could go on and on about all of the ways in which this is unfortunate for boxing and for the audience. And I can't imagine, even under these circumstances, that a rematch would elicit anything other than an embarrassing response compared to what they got the other night.
Well, before we get to that, with Jim Lampley, the voice of HBO Boxing, here on the Rich Eisen Show, after calling the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight on Saturday night, what was your understanding of Pacquiao's injury coming in? Was there any word, any whispers that you were hearing that he might not be 100% getting in that ring?
Zero, zip, not, the null set. Now, there were a lot of rumors floating around about him having had a bad camp, but that kind of stuff goes on prior to every fight. I heard rumors also that Mayweather didn't have a great camp. In fact, there were rumors coming from the Pacquiao side that Mayweather was only sparring 2 or 3 times a week, and he must have hand injury problems. So to the degree that anyone might have been hurt coming into the fight, my understanding from the grapevine was if that was the case, it would be Floyd. Nobody ever said anything to me prior to the fight about Manny Pacquiao having a shoulder injury. And then after the fight, that was what his people wanted to talk about. And of course, they were quite upset that the Nevada State Athletic Commission did not allow him to take the painkiller shot in the dressing room before the fight. And who knows? Maybe if he does not mismark the form and apparently misinform the doctors prior to the fight or the commission prior to the fight about his condition, is my understanding, without having seen the form, is that he planted an X in the box that says no injury. And once you've done that, I don't know exactly how you expect to be received when you come back hours later after the fight and say, oh, by the way, he had an extremely debilitating torn rotator cuff shoulder injury. If he had an extremely debilitating torn rotator cuff shoulder injury, why were people being allowed to pay 4-figure sums of money for tickets and $80, $90 for pay-per-view?
Yeah,
well, make sense to me.
It just seems that this was an unmitigated disaster from the start, Jim. At what point were you told by maybe the production truck or people involved with the fight that it would be delayed because there was a major snafu nationwide in regards to pay-per-view orders and cable and other operators being able to provide the fight?
I was told that by a producer about 3 minutes or 4 minutes before I said it on the air. We were standing up to do an on-camera, Al and Roy and myself were standing up to do an on-camera at the moment that we anticipated doing it. That was the main pre-fight on camera. And as we were in position and getting ready to do that, I heard from the producer in the truck that at this moment we were not going to do that on camera. but rather that I was to tell the audience that there was going to be a slight delay because of electronic overload, cable systems having difficulty accommodating all of the buys that were coming in. They needed more time to process that piece of electronic preparation and get more money, get more people into the tent, sell more pay-per-views, and we were told to fill for a little while. So we did fill, and added some time, created some program material and a discussion on camera in order to get more time for the cable systems to hook up pay-per-views. And no one had ever mentioned anything about an injury at that point.
Jim Lampley joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And then Pacquiao, there were times where it just looked like he wasn't throwing nearly as many punches as we're used to seeing him throw, as well as when a fighter knows he needs a knockout and the world essentially sees it, and that's usually his MO, is to just throw himself full bore at his opponent, and then he didn't do that. What were you thinking when you were calling that, Jim?
To me, that's the generic Floyd Mayweather win. I mean, I've seen fighters in that position many times against him. It was clear from the middle of the fight on that Canelo Alvarez needed to attack him and go after him and look for a knockout to have a chance to win. It was clear from the 8th or 9th round on against Oscar De La Hoya that De La Hoya needed to overwhelm him with his size and strength and do something to reverse the tide. Once we get into the latter stages of the fight, and Floyd clearly should be ahead on the scorecards because he's managing the rounds the way he does, limiting contact, not allowing the opponent to make a dent, then most of his opponents wind up in that situation. So that was what I had expected to see. I didn't see anything in the fight, frankly, that I did not expect to see going in, because I've seen Floyd Mayweather do this to any number of opponents, and Manny Pacquiao is 36 years old and hasn't had a knockout since 2009. So, in my mind, the equation was always that somebody was going to win this fight on the scorecards, and that if Manny were going to win the fight on the scorecards, he would have to do it with greater activity from the beginning. Manny and Freddie came into the fighter meeting on Thursday and openly articulated the plan that everybody expected, that he would need to throw a lot of punches in bunches, land combinations, win rounds by being more active and more the aggressor than Mayweather. That was the obvious formula for them to win. Then he came out and threw, I think, 29 punches in the first round, which was fewer than half of what we anticipated he would want to try to throw to be in the fight. And it didn't get much better in the second round. And at that point, you're pretty clear in your head that you're watching yet another Floyd Mayweather paint job, which has come to be the norm in all of these big Floyd Mayweather pay-per-views. And so there was no reason to think, just because Manny couldn't land punches or couldn't get into position to hit Floyd the way he wanted to hit him, that was predicated on an injury. That happens to virtually every Mayweather opponent.
So when you heard the news today that Mayweather had texted Stephen A. Smith to say he would give Pacquiao a rematch once he's done rehabbing from this injury in a year, you thought what, Jim Lampley?
I'm never shocked at cynicism in boxing. I'm never shocked at opportunism in boxing. I think that Floyd is an intelligent businessman who recognizes that Manny Pacquiao is never going to lose his large and ardent following. And it's no secret to Mayweather or anybody else that these hashtag polls going into the fight were overwhelmingly dominated by wishful thinking on Pacquiao's fans' part. 69% of our viewers reportedly saying that Manny would win the fight, which was really a way of saying that they hoped and prayed and dreamed that he would win the fight, couldn't stand to envision any other possible result. And as long as that love is out there for Manny, and it's global, not just here in the United States or the Philippines, then he remains an ideal opponent against whom for Floyd to make money, because he'll bring a lot of people into the tent. I mean, I was discussing with Max Kellerman yesterday the subject of Mayweather getting to 48-0 now, one more fight on the Showtime contract. He says this fall, a win makes him 49-0, ties Rocky Marciano. Floyd keeps insisting, no, after this next fight, I retire. and wouldn't try for the 50-0. How could you possibly believe that, given that he would be a promotional and business free agent after the 49-0 and would get a chance to go for the breakage of Marciano's record on business terms that might allow him to make even more money than he made in this instance. So Max said to me, well, it's very clear what happens here. Manny gets a shoulder operation. Manny rehabs. Manny gets a couple of wins against people like Brandon Rios and looks terrific again, and they set up the rematch. And I didn't want to think in my heart, in my mind, at that moment that Max is right, and that's the nature of the enterprise. But certainly, it looks that way now. And if Floyd says that he would give Manny a rematch, that wouldn't take place in September. That's somewhere down the road, maybe 9 months or a year from now. So it suggests that Floyd sniffs the scent of yet another big payday and is willing to entertain it.
Jim, you're the best. Thanks for calling in. I really appreciate it.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
You bet. That's Jim Lampley.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.